Hello all, welcome back to Bio 5. We are in week 16 of content. Again, if you are in summer school, you're going to be seeing these videos on the daily instead of on the weekly. So this will be like week 16 of coursework for you. We don't have a huge amount of crazy stuff going on this week. I'm catching up on grading and things, so like we should have a pretty accurate estimate of where we are in the class by the end of this week. I'm going to be doing that immediately after this recording session. And again, if you're in the summer school, I'm going to be entering in grades pretty much daily, so you'll be seeing it daily. With that, I think it's time for us to go and get back to our lessons. So I'm going to share screen and we're going to get into I can't remember the chapter, but oh yeah, chapter 16, the urinary tract system. That was it. Alrighty. Share. Alrighty, so let's go and share screen 2. Open the biology slideshow and watch it from the beginning. And now we're right where we need to be. And there I am in the corner looking all cute. Alrighty, folks. So we're going to be talking about the urinary system today. So urinary system, we're going to be going over a couple different qualities of it. We're going to go over the elimination of waste. We're going to go over the components of the urinary system. We're going to talk about the kidneys and homeostasis. We're going to talk about dialysis and transplant surgery. We're going to talk about urination, and we're going to talk about urinary tract infection. So, first, let's define some terms. Excretion is the elimination of waste and excess nutrients from the body. Metabolic waste that is produced is going to include carbon dioxide, water, heat. Urine is actually a way of eliminating heat from the body. Salts and nitrogen-containing waste, specifically the ones that can dissolve into a liquid. So that's going to be ammonia, urea, uric acid, and creatine. All these things are pretty toxic in the body and are a byproduct of protein metabolism. So you're going to go and see these getting eliminated. Several organs eliminate waste and excess essential ions. So that's going to be our electrolytes, things like, chlorine and potassium and sodium. The lungs are going to eliminate heat, water, and carbon dioxide. The skin gives off heat, water, bicarbonate ions, which you have in excess. Remember, we talked about bicarbonate, and it's important for the pH of blood the other day. Excess salts. The salts are going to include all the electrolytes, again, are chlorine and sodium and potassium. Urea and uric acid, which again are nitrogenous waste. Now, the organs of the GI tract emit solid waste and some metabolic waste. So that's going to go and be excrement, poop. The kidneys give up metabolic waste from the rest of the body. Urine is a mix of water and solutes. It's water, bicarbonate, and organic salts, hydrogen ions, urea, uric acid, and creatine. All of these, most of those are mainly the byproduct of muscle metabolism because that's one of the most energy intensive aspects of our body. But all of these are just byproducts of the general metabolic processes and the toxins that are going to be getting picked up in your blood over the course of metabolism. So here we have each of those systems that eliminate waste and how they're eliminating it. Integument, respiratory, digestive, and urinary. And a little example of what all those wastes are. Again, more detail in the prior slides. Now, the urinary system consists of 2 kidneys, 2 ureters, 1 urinary bladder, and 1 urethra. The function of this is to regulate your blood volume, pH, blood pressure, and the composition of your blood. So if there's a disbalance in your circulatory system, the urinary system is what's going to be mainly managing that. Like if you drink a lot of water, you'll notice you're peeing more. That's going to keep the concentration of your blood at an appropriate level. So organs, kidneys, regulate water and dissolve substances. Some are removed and returned to the blood. Some are not returned to the blood, and those form urine. It's a concentration of your filtered blood, basically. The ureters transport urine from the kidneys to the bladder. The urinary bladder stores urine, and then the urethra transports urine from the urinary bladder to the outside of the body. So here are each of those organs and what they do. This guy looks pretty chuffed for someone who's been cut in half vertically, but you know what? Good on him. Along with some of the circulatory system that's associated with the urinary tract. Now, the kidneys, reddish brown in color, shaped like beans, and they're about the size of a fist. So the kidneys can be subdivided into three different sections: the renal cortex, the renal medulla, and the renal pelvis. Nephrons are microscopic tubes, and these are the functional unit of the kidney. These are what actually forms urine from the blood. Each nephron's got to consist of a renal corpuscle and a renal tubule. So let's have a look at a diagram that shows that. So here you can see the kidney. This is its circulatory system. Here's the ureter and how everything connects in. Then if we look over here, again, this is the renal pelvis. These are the renal columns, and then these are the renal pyramids. And then here are the renal cortex. And when you get really deep into the renal cortex, here are your nephron units, and here's the collection duct for urine that's going from the formation of urine through the nephrons. Now, renal corpuscles are the site of filtration. They consist of a glomerulus, which is a little tuft of capillaries, like heavily capillated tissue, and a glomerular capsule, which surrounds the glomerulus. So the renal tubule is the site of reabsorption and secretion. It's going to consist of three sections: our proximal or convoluted tubule, the loop of the nephron, and the distal convoluted tubule. So we have a proximate one and a distal one. So let's have a look here. So again, here's a simplified view of a nephron, showing the basic structural components without the associated capillaries. Here's the associated capillary supply. So you see in the nephron, we have a little capillary bed. Then we have this proximal convoluted tubule, the luponephron, and then the distal tubule. And finally, we end up getting deposited into this collection duct, which is going to empty into the urinary bladder. So nephrons perform three functions: glomerular filtration, tubular reabsorption, and tubular secretion. Glomerular filtration is driven by blood pressure. It's going to force water, ions, and other small molecules from the blood to the space inside of the glomerular capsule. Within the glomerular capsule, concentration of the filtrate within the glomerular capsule is close to that of blood. So at this point, we have not started to go and concentrate our materials. So incoming arterial, outgoing arterial, all these glomerulus and the glomerular capsules are going to go and be starting to go and dilute off the toxins, and they're going to go and start filtering out. Capillary, fenestration pore, capillary endothelium. Here's the basement membrane, and then extension of the epithelial cells of glomerular capsule, filtration slit right here, and filter in space within the glomerular capsule. So yeah, it's just like a long, very complicated filtration tube. Tubular reabsorption. So this is reabsorption of usable materials from the filtrate to the blood. It's going to be mainly water. This is going to be mainly reclamation of water. It's proximal, distal convoluted tubules, and the collection ducts are all going to go and engage in a degree of reabsorption. So 99% of the filtrate is returned to the blood. The majority of it does not need to be removed. However, water, essential ions, and water, essential ions, and glucose, those are all necessary at a certain level, so those are going to be maintained at that certain level. This is kind of what the histology looks like if we go and open it up a bit. So you can see the microvilli of the cells lining the tubule greatly increase the surface area for reabsorption. Here's the lumen of the tubule all lined up with our tubes, our microvilli. Proximal convoluted tubule down here. Nucleus of a cell lining proximal convoluted tubule, and here is a capillary. Kind of a mixture of histology and sketch here, so it's a little bit confusing. So just as a point of reference, here is some of the amount filtered and the percentage reabsorbed into the body for the components of the blood that are going to be filtered by the kidneys. So each day you're filtering about 180 liters of water. You're going to reabsorb about 99% of that. Glucose, you reabsorb 100% of that unless you are a diabetic, at which point you might start to have sugar in your urine. It's one of the main indicators. About half of urea is removed. All of creatine is removed. Creatine is a toxic waste metabolite. And then the majority of of sodium and potassium are going to be removed, as is the majority of bicarbonate. These numbers are not perfect. There's always impurities, but for standard measurable objectives within the body, these are the percentages that we tend to be working with in an ideal system. So, tubular secretion along the proximal, distal, along the proximal, distal, convoluted tubules and collection ducts, removes waste from the blood, removes excess ions from the blood. So all this is done to go and just remove toxins. Got to keep beating that drum over and over again. Now, kidneys help regulate blood pH by returning bicarbonate ions. We know that that's what the main chemical that regulates blood pH to the blood during tubular reabsorption. Removing excess hydrogen ions, namely hydrogen, can be seen directly as acidity. So removing excess hydrogen ions, lowering the acidity from the blood during tubular secretion, and it also is going to be generating new bicarbonate ions to further buffer the blood. And this occurs when proximal convoluted tubule cells metabolize glutamine, chemical glutamine. Here's a bit of a diagram just showing that process. So we start up here in the glomerular filtration, waters, ions, amino acids, all these other small molecules are going to move from the glomerulus to the inside of the glomerular capsule to form glomerular filtrate, which is the name of the fluid with a high concentration of toxins. Tubular reabsorption is going to go and occur. So water, essential ions, and nutrients are reabsorbed from the proximal convoluted tubule into the surrounding capillaries. This is where we're reabsorbing all our nutrients, all up in there, all throughout this tube system. Then finally, tubular secretion. What is left that has not been reabsorbed? The waste, excessive ions, and drugs are actively secreted into the collecting duct, and from there excreted from the bladder. So juxtamedullary nephrons refer to nephrons that have very long loops. These extend into the renal medulla, and these are responsible mainly for conserving water. The renal medulla is going to go and have maintenance of high solute concentrations in the interstitial fluid. Water moves out of the descending loop, the DCT, and the collecting ducts, and leads to production of concentrated urine and water conservation. This is particularly important for tropical species and species from very cold areas, as those two areas tend to lead to a lot of loss of bodily water. And here again, it's that same procedure, just slightly simplified and focusing on water and electrolytes. Here we see our electrolytes leaving, all our salts leaving, water leaving, getting concentrated, until finally we have nice concentrated urine. So we aren't wasting all that fluid. Salt and water levels need to be near optimum values inside of the body. So that is in part why the kidneys developed as a system. So 3 hormones are going to go and help regulate that. These are going to go and be aldosterone, antidiuretic hormone, and atrial natriuretic peptide. So aldosterone, it's released by the adrenal cortex. It's going to go and be triggered by low blood pressure, stress, and higher potassium levels. So these are all things associated with like, oh, you're very dehydrated. So the effects of this is going to increase the reabsorption of sodium and increase the secretion of potassium to keep your electrolytes balanced. You need sodium, potassium, and chlorine. You need them in very specific ratios. More water is going to follow the sodium into the blood. So by bringing more salt into the body, that's going to go and be changing our osmotic concentration on either side of the membrane. It's going to go and pull water with it. And this is in turn going to increase blood volume and blood pressure and also make more concentrated urine because we're pulling water from the urinary tract. Now, antidiuretic hormone is produced by the hypothalamus and released by the posterior pituitary gland. And this is going to stimulate increased osmolality. So what does this mean? So antidiuretic hormone is going to increase the permeability of the system to water. It's going to occur at the DCT and the collection ducts, and it's going to move water from the filtrate to the blood to increase blood volume and blood pressure and increase the concentration of urine. Alcohol and marijuana both restrict your ability to produce the antidiuretic hormone, so they both will go and make you pee more and also leave you dehydrated. A hangover, in fact, is actually a very severe dehydration headache. And the best treatment for it is electrolytes, water, and caffeine, and over-the-counter NSAID painkillers. Those are pretty good too. You're basically treat yourself like you are severely dehydrated. Here is some of that anatomy and where all this absorption is occurring. We've gone over this diagram many times over the course of this presentation, so I'm not going to beat the drum too hard here. But this is going to explain the function of each section and also illustrate them within a model. So juxtaglomerular apparatus within the square and a section of the nephron where the distal convoluted tubule contacts the afferent arteriole. The nearby renal corpuscle is shown in ghosted view to reveal its components, the glomerular capsule and the glomerulus. So here is our arteriole, convoluted tubule, and this is where they're meeting. Here are the juxtaglomerular cells. And this is, and this is just going to show that entire process. Stimulus, decreased water concentration of water in the blood. Hypothalamus detects the stimulus. Hypothalamus freaks the fuck out and releases ADH from the posterior lobe of the pituitary, specifically over here on the left. Neurosensory detection cells produce the antidiuretic hormone, then it's released down here. And here's the interior lobe of the pituitary gland, which we are not concerned about right now. So hypothalamus detects stimulus, makes you thirsty. Drinking increases the concentration of water in the blood. So there's also a behavioral regulation aspect of this, as well as making your kidneys do things. It's going to go and make you thirsty. This is going to increase blood volume, blood pressure, and decrease urine volume because you're reclaiming water from the urine. And here we can go and see how this process is being done of reclaiming water from the urine through the release of ADHD, not ADHD, ADH, its concentration through all these tubules, all the nephron loops, and then finally its redeposition into the collection duct, and from there the urinary bladder, and then, unless you're like in a business meeting or something, into the ureter, into the urethra, and then from there into the toilet. Now, let's move on. Now, again, both the behavioral change and the internal processes lead to an increase in blood volume and blood pressure. The decrease in urine volume is going to be more symptomatic of the increased concentration, not drinking more water. This will actually dilute your urine if you drink enough. So, atrial natriuretic peptide is released from the right atrium of the heart, and it's going to increase blood volume and blood pressure. So this is detected in the cardiac system. So what's it going to do is it's going to decrease the reabsorption of sodium and inhibit renin/aldosterone production. It's going to decrease the blood volume and pressure, produce dilute urine, and cause vasodilation. So this is the opposite of the other hormones we've looked at so far. It's going to go and help us get rid of excess water from our blood by depositing it into the urine. And here's just a review of what those hormones do and how they are doing it. Now, kidneys, homeostasis. Kidneys release a hormone known as erythropoietin. This is going to stimulate the production of red blood cells and red bone marrow. It's going to activate vitamin D and turn it into calcitriol, which in turn is going to promote the absorption and use of calcium and phosphorus by the body. That is the main utility of vitamin D. It helps you absorb other things. So when an individual is undergoing renal failure, this is a decrease or complete cessation of glomerular filtration. And this can be either acute or chronic. So it can go and either be a temporary thing or it can be forever. Renal failure It's going to lead to acidosis, which is increased acidity inside of the body. It's going to lead to anemia, decreased red blood cells. It's going to lead to edema, hypertension, cardiac issues, accumulation of nitrogen, waste in the blood, ammonia toxicity. It's all very nasty. The buildup of some of these toxins is going to go and be associated with like complete shutdown of the body. So this is something that we want to treat as quick as possible. So treatments for renal failure, there's a hemodialysis, which uses an artificial device to cleanse the blood in place of a kidney. Now, occasionally we also will go and use something called continuous ambulatory peritoneal dialysis. And this is where the patient's own peritoneum is still intact enough so that we can use that as the dialysis membrane. We prefer to do this just because it's less invasive. Kidney transplant. This is the ultimate goal in theory for a renal transplant, for renal failure. Patient receives a healthy kidney from another person and then hopefully doesn't reject it. It's important to note for organ transplants that each transplant is going to last about 10 years. The immune system will eventually start to break down that organ because it's going to recognize it as foreign tissue. So if you do get an organ transplant, you need pretty persistent follow-ups with your doctor. And at some point, you have to realize you're going to go under the knife again. So here, donor kidney, donor ureter, pelvis, transplant. Here are the recipient's own kidneys. They don't bother to remove the destroyed kidney typically when they go and transplant in a new kidney. There's just not really a lot of point to it. It's not hurting anything, and it's really close to a lot of really heavy circulation. Trying to remove this kidney is just an undue risk to the patient. So instead, we tuck it in the cup of the pelvis and hook it to the urinary bladder from there and to the circulatory system just a little bit further down. So process of emptying the urinary bladder includes both involuntary and voluntary components. The internal urethral sphincter, smooth muscle, involuntary. You cannot control this. The external urethral sphincter, this is a skeletal muscle. This is how you hold your pee. So let's go and look at the anatomy. This is showing a male model, but this system, other than the presence of, other than the length of the tract itself and the presence of the prostate, this is going to be the same in a female system as well. So the urine fills with bladder, stretch receptors in its wall to send impulses to the lower spinal cord. Those impulses travel back to the bladder and called the detrusor muscle to contract and the internal urethral sphincter to relax. So impulses also travel to the brain where they initiate the desire to urinate. So this is when it's telling you have to pee. All right, so here's the internal urethral sphincter. And then here's the external urethral sphincter. This is the one you can control. This is the one you cannot. It's right below the prostate. This is in part why if an individual has prostate cancer or an enlarged prostate, it becomes a lot harder for them to pee and they feel like they have to pee all the time because these nerves are getting stimulated constantly by the swollen organ. Now, if the time is appropriate, the brain permits voluntary relaxation of the external urethral sphincter, and then from there, urethra is deposited, or urine's deposited into the latter region of the urethra and exits the system from there. Now, urinary incontinence is a lack of voluntary control over urination. It's pretty normal for infants and toddlers. It's a learned behavior. Stress incontinence is pretty common in women. It has to do with the nature of the organs down there. It's also a lot more common in women after they've given birth. Like a lot of women will suffer from leakage throughout the course of their life, so they have to go and wear a pad to adjust for it after birth. This is less common nowadays due to the nature of our surgical practices and the way we deliver babies if you have a baby in a hospital. But it is still something to be aware of, and it is a natural thing. It's not something to get freaked out over. So urinary retention, failure to expel urine from the bladder to a normal degree. This, again, is also associated with enlarged prostate, as well as scarification of the urinary tract and a few other disorders. If you get frequent urinary tract infections, this might become an issue. So UTI, presence of microorganisms in the organs of the urinary system, urinary tract infection. So bacteria can enter the urethra from the rectum or as STDs. So this is pretty common for people who engage in anal intercourse and things like that. That's an activity that, as a professional, I would say you should probably wear protection so that you don't get bacteria in your, But I'm not here to tell you how to live your life. I'm just a sad, tired biologist. All right. So bacteria can enter the urethra from the rectum or as STDs. This is more common in women than men because of the nature of the reproductive system. So if we look at the male system here, there is a incredibly long length of urethra that an infection has to travel up before it can go and reach the urinary bladder and start doing real damage. You'll notice an injury to your penis and treat it before it has a chance to damage your internal systems. For a lot of women, because because the urethra is significantly shorter, they're way more subject to urinary tract infections. It also has to do with the nature of intercourse, where something is entering the body as opposed to your body entering something else. That's going to introduce more foreign agents. And it's also going to get them closer to your urinary bladder and deeper inside of your body over the course of that process. So it's something to go and have in consideration. Hygiene is incredibly important, as is, protection and communication, and honestly, medical testing. Like, you should probably if you have a new partner, before you have intercourse with them, you should get a clean bill of health from your doctor. Like, I don't know. This is less important if you're not very promiscuous, but it is something that everyone should be aware of because you never know what's going to sneak in. All right. Yeah, and again, this can also be induced by your clothing or high humidity or stress. Like, you are covered and filled with bacteria. All you need is your immune system to go and hiccup. Now, symptoms are going to be standard as they are in a lot of other infections. Fever, blood in the tissue associated, so this becomes bloody urine, painful and frequent urination because the tract is getting damaged. And the way we tend to go and deal with it is we just treat antibiotics and we treat with intense antibiotics. We treat the infections of the lower urinary tract occasionally directly. And the goal is to terminate the infection before it reaches the kidneys and leads to kidney failure. Yeah, so here's the female model. As you can see, ureter's way shorter. Ureter is way longer over here. Also, again, nature of the way people tend to be interfacing with these organs. So, given that, sorry about the sex ed talk, kids. If it makes you feel any better, I know all this stuff because I was a zookeeper and not for any other reason. Now, let's list the organs and systems that eliminate waste. Well, I mean, I also worked at a vet hospital. It's all animals. It's where I get all this knowledge. All animals, I swear to God. Now, list the organs and systems that eliminate waste. Identify and give the functions of each of the organs of the urinary system. Explain the roles of the kidneys in maintaining homeostasis in the body. Describe the structure of the nephrons and the processes of glomerular filtration, tubular reabsorption, and tubular secretion. You should be able to explain the role of the kidneys in the maintenance of the acid-base balance, red blood cell production, activation of vitamin D, and water conservation, including the relevant hormonal control. Should be able to differentiate between acute and chronic renal failure and describe the processes of dialysis and kidney transplant. Should be able to explain the voluntary and involuntary components of urination and the causes of urinary incontinence. Should be able to name various urinary tract infections, identify common causes of those infections. All right, folks, let me stop the screen share there. Where did that go? There. Alrighty, folks. So that covers our content for this week. Urinary tract and honestly, its associated effects with the reproductive tract. It's just something that's interesting to know about. It's important to know, especially as Californians. We are chronically dehydrated people, and we have a lot of kidney damage because of that. So, take care of yourselves, take care of your bodies. Have a great day. Bye bye.